Hey, what's up guys? It's Matt with the Movement System. Today we're going to be talking about nutrition for the NSCA CSCS Exam. So we're going to go over nutrition calculations, nutrition for performance, different things that are important to know about nutrition. We're going to go over macronutrients, how many calories it takes to lose a pound, glycogen, protein, electrolytes, the Cunningham Equation, and a lot more. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Alright, so let's lay the foundation here with macronutrients. So, the three main macronutrients are carbs, fats, and protein. The other one would be alcohol, which is a little bit different, but not going to be in the CSCS equations. Now, it's really important that we know the difference between grams and calories and how to convert back and forth. This is important when we're analyzing someone's diet as well as analyzing food sources. So, what we need to know about these guys, carbs are 4 calories per gram. So if we have 1 gram of carbs, it's 4 calories. Protein is 4 calories per 1 gram. So 1 gram of protein, 4 calories. Fat is 9 calories per gram. So let's go ahead and dive right into a question. If we have a protein bar with 20 grams of protein, 8 grams of carbs, and 2 grams of fat, how many calories are in that protein bar total? Okay, so the way we're going to approach this, guys, 20 grams of protein times 4 calories per gram is going to get us 80 calories of protein. 8 grams of carbs times 4 calories per gram of carb is 32 calories worth of carbs. 2 times 9, again calories per gram there, is going to get us 18 calories. So if we add that 80 plus the 32 plus the 18, that gets us a total of 130 calories. Okay, so if we need to now determine what percentage of the energy of that protein bar is protein, how are we going to do that? We have two different approaches. We could take the total grams. We have 20 grams of protein, 8 grams of carbs, 2 grams of fat. That's 30 grams total. If we take 20 divided by 30 and we say 2/3 of the energy is protein, that is wrong. That's not correct. Instead, we have to use calories. So if you're going to determine percentage of energy source coming from a macronutrient, you have to convert to calories and then do that percentage. So in this case, you'll convert to the calories and you'll do 80 divided by the 130, and that'll get us a little bit less, about 61.5% of the energy of that protein bar is from protein. Again, the reason for that is because the fat is unequal in terms of the energy distribution in the calories per gram. So you have to convert to calories and then you do the percentages. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to a question that's really, really important to know. How many calories deficit is going to lead to a 1 pound weight loss? And the answer for this, guys, is 3,500 calorie deficit is going to lead to a 1 pound weight loss. So that is something we just need to memorize. We need to have a total of 3,500 calorie deficit to lose 1 pound. Now, in reality, the question is going to be harder than that. We're going to have to know, based on a given athlete's energy intake, how many days it will take them to lose a certain number of pounds. So let's go ahead and dive into that question. So let's assume an athlete is consuming 3,200 calories per day and her daily energy expenditure is 3,500 calories per day. How long will it take this athlete to lose 2 pounds? Alright, so let's go step by step through how to do this problem. First, what we're going to do is the athlete wants to lose 2 pounds. So we know 3,500 calories to lose 1 pound, multiply that by 2, we need a total of a 7,000 calorie deficit. Now, what we need to do is now find what her daily deficit is. So to do that, we're going to do the energy expenditure of 3,500 minus the energy consumption of 3,200, and this is going to get us a 300 calorie deficit that she's in per day. So basically, she's eating 300 calories less than she's expending. That 300 calorie deficit per day is what we're going to use now with the 7,000 calories. So the way we're going to do that is 7,000 calories total deficit that she needs to get. We're going to divide by 300 calories daily deficit. So again, total energy deficit divided by the 300 calories daily deficit is going to get us a total, in this case, of 23.333 days. So that means that it's going to take her 24 days to reach a 2 pound weight loss at this current energy balance. Alright guys, quick pause here. If you want to learn more about this stuff, go ahead and join the Strength Conditioning Study Group on Facebook. That's where we dive into these questions on Facebook Lives each week. And there's notes sheets and videos, and you guys can ask questions back and forth. So if you're not already in that group, go ahead and search Strength Conditioning Study Group on Facebook or click the link in the description below to join. Alright, so now let's go ahead and talk more about protein. I will link a video here all about protein recommendations for athletes and how to calculate the exact recommendation for a given athlete that I did over here. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the details of protein and amino acids and what we need to know. Importantly, guys, protein is made of amino acids. So if you look at a protein jug here, you can see 24 grams of protein, but right on there you can see how many grams of that are branched chain amino acids. So in this case, this is gold standard whey protein, strawberries and cream. I usually get chocolate, but this goes well in smoothies. But 5.5 grams out of the 24 grams is branched chain amino acids. The rest of it could be all of the other amino acids. So here's how it works, guys. There are 20 amino acids. So we have 9 of those that are essential amino acids. 3 of the essential amino acids are branched chain amino acids. So let's break that down one more time. We have 20 total amino acids. If you think about Legos, you could have like 20 different colored Legos. Those are the building blocks of protein. If we pick out, 9 of those specific Legos, those we call the essential amino acids. Those are the most important building blocks in a sense that you have to get them from your diet, be it protein sources like this or just food sources. You have to find the essential amino acids in your diet because they're not produced naturally in the body. The other 11 amino acids, they're either conditionally essential, meaning that your body produces some, like histidine, or they're just non-essential and your body produces enough that you don't need to get them in the diet. So the 9 essential amino acids are the most important because again, you have to get those from your diet. Now out of those 9 building blocks, those 9 Legos that are essential amino acids, 3 of them, and we'll tell you about which 3 in a second, are the branched chain amino acids. And those 3 are the most important whenever we think about muscle protein synthesis and muscle building. So those 3, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, are the 3 branched chain amino acids. So in this protein, out of the building blocks, 5.5 grams are coming from that leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So that's what that 5.5 grams of BCAAs means, and that's part of the 24 grams. So you can get supplements that are just the BCAAs, but really we know that the BCAAs are within the protein that you're eating, either just in food or in a protein supplement already. Okay, so another thing to think about is that the amount of BCAAs is what determines the protein quality. So lower quality proteins, I was actually just at Sam's Club, which is similar to Costco, and they had a protein that had 4 grams of BCAAs in their 1 scoop of whey protein. So it's probably cheaper, but it's also a little bit lower quality because there's less percentage of branched chain amino acids. There's potentially more non-essential amino acids in that protein, which is what makes it a little bit lower quality. A protein isolate that might be even higher quality than this, that could have less carbohydrate in it because it's isolated, and it also could potentially have more of that BCAA in it. So that's something to think about when we're thinking about protein quality. And then out of those branched chain amino acids, leucine is the one that we see that having the highest relationship to muscle protein synthesis. If you've ever heard of the supplement HMB, hydroxymethylbutyrate, that is a supplement that's a precursor basically to leucine. And again, it's not really actually that beneficial, but it's just important to kind of understand the relationship of kind of all the amino acids and the essential amino acids, the branch chains, and then kind of the king of the branch chains is that leucine. And that's why everyone kind of focuses heavily on that leucine whenever it comes to supplementation. But really, more of the current evidence is kind of suggesting that we need a full cascade of essential amino acids so that there's no real competition in terms of stimulating that muscle protein synthesis. So really what we need to be recommending to our athletes is protein sources, good quality protein sources, whole foods, that kind of thing, not getting so nitpicky with the supplements. Alright, so real quick, just to review, again, check the video for the full description and practice questions on protein specifically, but we do want to know that the athlete recommendations for endurance athletes we have 1.0 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight. For strength athletes, it's 1.4 to 1.7 grams per kilogram body weight. If we're in a weight loss type situation and we want to maintain muscle mass, we could even push higher than that. Or if we're in a weight gain situation, we could potentially push higher than those recommendations. So again, go into that protein video, linked in the description below for more details about that. And then one thing I also wanted to mention is that those recommendations for athletes are significantly higher than the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance of 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day for athletes. That 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day is really just meant to keep people out of a deficit, and it is vastly inadequate for athletes and is by no means optimal for muscle protein synthesis. Alright, let's talk about carbs next. So if we eat a donut and we break down that donut into the bloodstream, we call it blood glucose. So we can also call that blood sugar. So when we're saying carbs or glucose, just think about it as little small pieces of a donut or a bagel or whatever you ate that's now floating around your bloodstream. So it goes through your stomach, gets digested into the intestines, through the intestinal wall, into the bloodstream, and now we call it glucose. That glucose, once it's in your bloodstream, it can go to either short-term storage or to long-term storage. Once that blood sugar is high enough and we have to put it into storage, that individual glucose molecule has a choice. It can either form a complex polymer and go to a short-term glycogen storage. So if it combines with some other glucose and goes into short-term storage in our muscle or in our liver, we call that glycogen. That's our short-term storage of carbohydrates. It also has the option to go to long-term storage, and that's really whenever it's converted to fat. When we're thinking about glycogen, that's our short-term storage that's fairly limited. So for the average person, they're limited to about 1,200 calories to maybe 1,500 calories worth of glycogen stores. So if your glycogen store is filled up, then you're going to go to long-term storage. And that's really important because 1,200 calories, if you figure running 1 mile is about 100 calories, and say you're running a half marathon, if you were to just run a half marathon without fueling and without consuming food during that half marathon, you would burn right through your glycogen, and then that's what we call hit the wall. So this is why it's really important that we have recommendations for athletes in terms of consuming carbs to replenish glycogen or save the glycogen stores during a workout. Alright, so that being said, how much should we recommend that our runners or our athletes consume during their workout? So when we're thinking about intra-workout carbohydrate supplementation, this could be Gatorade in a sports drink, this could be a bar of some type, a banana, an orange, whatever. How much carbohydrate should athletes consume as they're working out? And really there's a range for this, anywhere from about 30 to the higher end being around 90 for most athletes, grams of carbs. So what I want you guys to definitely remember is that most athletes need about 1 gram of carb per minute. So 1 gram of carbohydrate per minute, that's about 60 grams per hour. This should come from a mixture of glucose and fructose. So if we can get something like Gatorade, which is actually a mixture, a 50-50 blend of glucose and fructose, and in the case of Gatorade, it's within water, at about an 8% osmolality, meaning it's digestible and easy to get into your bloodstream and actually used for energy. What we're trying to get at though is about 1 gram of carb per minute, about 60 grams of carbs per hour. Now, if you're thinking, okay, an athlete's running a half marathon, they're running it in, 2 hours, that's about 7 miles per hour, roughly. That means they're actually expending 700 calories per hour. Now, if they're only consuming 60 grams of carbs, and we know from the front of the video, 60 grams of carbs is 6 times 4, 240 calories worth of carbs, they're not going to replenish that full 700 calories that they're expending. So they are going to deplete their storage over time, but at the same time, they're going to maintain that storage for longer than if they didn't consume at all. And now you guys might be wondering, well, why don't they just consume more? Why don't they just consume 150 grams of carbs per hour? Well, most athletes don't have the stomach to do that, I guess. So the ability to consume carbs is based on your ability to digest. And the problem with hitting 90, 100 grams of carbs per hour is that you get stomach discomfort and it kind of just sits there trying to digest. While some trained endurance athletes can push up into 100, 120, 140 potentially grams of carbs per hour that they can consume, you're thinking like people on the Tour de France or something like that have trained for this, most athletes are really going to sit around that 30 to 90 gram range. Alright guys, if this video has been helpful for you so far, go ahead and hit the like button. It'll help out the YouTube algorithm and help other people find the video. And then one other thing we want to think about when we're thinking about marathon runners and fueling for performance is electrolytes. And when we sweat, we deplete our electrolytes. And what are electrolytes? This is something that it sounds like a fancy term, but really, if you're thinking about like a Gatorade bottle, what's in there is really only about 3 ingredients. The main 3 ingredients there are carbs, so that's your glucose, and then potassium and sodium. So really it's just sugar, salt, and then potassium. Like if you ate a chunk of a banana, maybe a quarter of a banana, a little bit of salt and some sugar and water, that's really all that's in Gatorade. But again, it's in the specific ratio that's optimal for athletes to consume. So when we think about sweating, we deplete our sodium and our potassium. And the risk of just drinking water is that we can basically go into a state of hyponatremia. And this is a state where our cells have excessive water but not enough electrolyte. And that can cause cell swelling and potentially some negative effects. And that's why we want to consume adequate electrolytes to maintain our fluid balance, maintain our cell permeability and our cell volume appropriately. And this is what's going to keep us from hitting the wall and then running into those other side effects. Alright guys, if you happen to be out there and you want these notes, these are just the notes with all the information I was going over today, you can actually go ahead and download those. No email required. Just go to smartstrengthcoach.com and then hit the download button and you can download this. So again, if you guys want more information, just hit the Strength Conditioning Study Group on Facebook or hit that website smartstrengthcoach.com for more information there. Alright, let's go ahead and dive into the Cunningham Equation. The Cunningham Equation is what we use to calculate an athlete's RMR. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about an athlete's BMR and RMR. So BMR stands for basal metabolic rate and RMR stands for resting metabolic rate. What we're trying to get at with these equations and with these metabolic rates is how many calories an athlete's burning per day. So basal metabolic rate is if the athlete was just sitting there, bed rest, not accounting for their thermic effective food, not accounting for their activity. That's just their basic metabolic rate, how many calories they would burn just sitting there all day. Resting metabolic rate takes a little bit more into account. So this is going to take into account their activity energy expenditure to some extent, but not their full energy expenditure. We actually need to add an activity factor to get their total daily energy expenditure, which will be higher than RMR. So when we're thinking about calculating RMR, the way that the CSCS exam recommends doing it for athletes is to use the Cunningham Equation. And the Cunningham Equation uses the athlete's lean body mass, which makes it more appropriate for athletes versus the Harris-Benedict equation, which doesn't use the athlete's lean body mass. So let's go ahead and through an example of the Cunningham Equation. And it's really important to actually point out right here that there's a typo in the 4th edition NSCA CSCS book that says the Cunningham Equation is 550 plus 22 times lean body mass, but the correct actual equation is 500 plus 22 times lean body mass. But we're going to use the correct equation, which is that 500 plus 22 times their lean body mass. So we're going to use myself as an example for this question. If I'm roughly 190 pounds, we divide that by 2.2, that gets about 86.4 kilograms. Now, for the Cunningham Equation, we have to use lean body mass. So assuming about 18% body fat, I would do the 86.4 kilograms times 0.82, and that would get 70.85 kilograms. We're going to put that 70.85 kilograms into the equation. So it'll be 500 plus 22 times that 70.85. When we calculate that out, that's going to get us 2,058.6. Now, it's important to remember that got us RMR, our resting metabolic rate. We then need to calculate by an activity factor if we want to get total energy expenditure for the day. So the activity factor ranges from 1.2 to 1.9. If we use an activity factor right in the middle as a moderately active, that's going to be 1.5. So we're going to use 2,058.6 times 1.5 gets us 3,088 calories, and that would be the total daily energy expenditure for me roughly. So one thing I want to address here is the difference between pre-competition and pre-training meals. So the goal of nutrition pre-competition is to maximize the blood flow going to our muscles and maximize our glycogen storage, but it's not necessarily to maximize muscle protein synthesis. So for that reason, 1 hour before competition, it's recommended that athletes have about 35 grams of carbohydrate and no protein. 2 hours before competition, it's recommended that athletes have about 70 grams of carbohydrate. So really it just doubles. If they can consume about 35 in 1 hour, 2 hours before they would consume 70 grams. 4 hours before, athletes would consume a range of about 70 upward of 270 grams of carbs, and kind of right in the middle of that is 140 grams. So again, that carb just doubles every 2 hours and then doubles from 2 to 4 hours. So about 140 grams of carbs 4 hours out. And in that meal 4 hours out, we can also see that athletes should have about 10 to 17 grams of protein. Now, you might be thinking that athletes consuming nothing but carbs and protein for 4 hours before, they might get hungry or they might not be full. But again, the goal of those recommendations, those are pre-competition recommendations, and the goal of those is to maximize the blood flow to the skeletal muscle for performance. So we're just trying to maximize digestion and blood flow to the skeletal muscles, and we can eat protein after the competition, because the point is that we want to avoid protein and fat before the competition so that the body's not diverting blood flow to the gut and digesting food while it should be diverting that blood to the muscles, delivering oxygen, and performing better. If we're thinking about maximizing the muscle protein response and the endocrine response of training, in that case it may be beneficial to have protein closer to the time of training. Again, too much protein and we run the risk of digesting rather than diverting blood to the muscles. Alright, real quick, I want to touch on energy systems here. So when we're thinking about aerobic endurance athletes, the lower intensity and the longer the sport, the more oxidative that sport is. So we know this from an energy systems perspective, that the lower intensity, the more fat we're burning and the more we're using oxidative energy systems like glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation to create ATP. For shorter duration activities and higher intensity activities, sports that require sprinting and things like that, and power sports, those are going to be more anaerobic. Anaerobic sports are going to have a higher percentage of energy contribution from carbohydrates because you have to be using that anaerobic process, right? We're going to go through anaerobic glycolysis, result in lactate, and that process doesn't require oxygen. It does require glucose and not fat. Again, fat is digested separately. That's through beta oxidation and leading to acetyl-CoA and leading to the Krebs cycle, and all of that requires oxygen. Anaerobic glycolysis doesn't require oxygen, and we can do it with carbs quickly. So that's again why anaerobic training and high intensity training is going to use more carbohydrate as an energy source. Alright guys, so I hope this was a good review of CSCS nutrition for you. If you like learning from videos like this and you want a comprehensive list of videos for each topic, go ahead and click the link in the description below to see the strength conditioning study course. If this was helpful for you, go ahead and hit the like button and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on videos like this in the future. If you want to learn more, go ahead and join the strength conditioning study group on Facebook. Alright guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.